weekly look at all of the hot topics in HR.
Whether it's passive talent or it's active talent.
That's a soft skill that really gets undersold in the hiring process.
How to manage in the virtual environment.
You get a diverse, cultured group of people, it's a win-win for everybody.
More conversion from candidate leads.
What does that look like in this new virtual world?
Welcome, everyone. It is Thursday, noon Eastern time, and you know what that means. It is time for Talent Experience Live. I am your host, Devin Foster, and this is your weekly look at the hot topics in HR, interviews with leaders in the industry, as well as hot new HR tech, covering everything that you need to know in recruitment, talent acquisition, as well as talent management. Before we get started, I always love to say, share this out to your network. Today is a very, very special topic. It's all about EVP, an employer brand. So definitely share this out. Sharing is caring. And if you aren't able to catch the full episode, always remember you can watch it on YouTube immediately following the program, or check out our Phenom blog where we do a nice little recap, complete with short digestible clips, as well as a nice write-up that you are more than welcome to share out to your friends, family, and loved one. I mentioned at the top of the program that we are talking about EVP today, and since it is late September, and honestly, we all really should be back at school, we are going to school you on some EVP. What do the best employee value propositions have in common? How do you showcase yours to win and retain in today's talent really world and how crazy it has been? So today we are discussing top employer brand tips, common recruitment marketing misconceptions, and examples of stellar EVPs that are resonating with candidates and employees. I mentioned before, you can share this, but also you can always hop into the chat, the comment section, make your voice heard in real time. We love to interact with the audience. That is one of the beautiful aspects of doing this live. And I'm going to start it off with a brief little icebreaker that we actually posted out to our Phenom LinkedIn page. And the question was, what element do you depend on most to convey your EVP or employer value proposition? Is it the career site? Is it talent marketing campaigns? Is it everyone's favorite social media? Maybe you started a TikTok recently, or is it just good old-fashioned events, rubbing elbows with people, even if it may be virtually? So while you answer that, speaking of events, next week is a big week for Phenom. We have I Am HR coming up, and it is September 21st through the 24th. This is a 4-day virtual event to tackle your biggest hiring and retention challenges, reinvigorate your team, and redesign the experiences for candidates, employees, recruiters, and managers. With over 24 sessions over the course of those 4 days, you won't want to miss this event. You can register now at phenom.com/IamHR-2021, because even though it feels like 2019 was yesterday, I checked the calendar this morning and we are in fact in 2021. So I mentioned that we did put this poll out. I see Jen chimes in the comments section that says, is there an above all option? Tom also says he would like to select all of the above. Unfortunately, on our poll on LinkedIn, we did not provide that as an option. And I have the results here. It looks like almost 50%, 48 to be exact, said career site, 10% said talent marketing campaigns, 30% said social media, and just around 13% said events. I am a big fan of career sites. I think that is a great way to get it out, but I think social media is a force to be reckoned with in the future when it comes to EVP. So don't take my word for it. Today we have a spectacular guest joining me talking about getting your EVP right. It is Michelle Sargent, VP of New Business and Partnerships at Recruitics. Without any further hesitation, let's bring Michelle onto the program. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hello. Happy National Working Parents Day.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Happy National Working Parent Day to you as well. And I believe happy, did you say guacamole day before the call as well?
Guacamole day. It's Play-Doh day. It's cinnamon raisin toast day. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Yes.
It's a big day. And the one thing that you didn't mention was Michelle is on TXL talking about EVP today, which I think should be celebrated by all.
We might start another holiday. You don't know, Devin.
We just might. Michelle, it is tradition typically to ask people on this program how they got involved with HR. Nobody grows up wanting to do that. But I know your role isn't specifically human resource focused. So I want to ask you, how did you get started working with talent acquisition folks? Was this something that you grew up as a little girl and always wanted to do? Or did you just so happen to fall into it?
Well, there's a show called Bewitched that used to be on. Anybody old enough to have watched Bewitched knows you always wanted to grow up in advertising, not recruitment marketing. Nobody knew that was a thing for sure. But I used to write jingles. I just loved writing the jingles, and I entered a contest to go to college, and I won. I wrote a jingle for Aurora toilet tissue. No, I'm not going to sing it now, but I did do that. And then after college, I moved from Los Angeles up to the Bay Area and found a job at BSA Advertising. If anybody knows what BSA is, you are as old as me, and congratulations for making it this far. I was a media coordinator brought in to help an account executive. My mentor, Catherine Frazier, she wouldn't let go of her clients. And I started working with all of her customers who were talent acquisition folks and helping them with their recruitment marketing. And back in the day where you had to reserve space in the newspaper and place ads late on a Thursday night. And fast forward to 35 years later, 7 agencies under my belt. I have been into the recruitment marketing world, helping thousands of amazing talent acquisition folks hire great people.
That's awesome. You mentioned a lot of those advertising agencies and things like that. I have to ask you, do you know the person who is behind 1-800-CARS-FOR-KIDS? And how can we stop that from ever airing again?
I don't know, but I will tell you, in my spare time, I'm a professional researcher, not stock researcher. I can find out for you.
I know you know all of the daily holidays, which is fantastic. Michelle, can you tell the audience a little bit about Recruitics and what your role has evolved in there, especially with your expertise?
You bet. Currently, I'm VP of New Business and Partnerships here at Recruitics. I landed here by way of the acquisition of KRT Marketing back in July of 2019. But Recruitics is really a data-centric recruitment marketing agency that makes it easy for the world's leading brands to attract great talent, which sounds funny in today's current state of affairs. Nothing is easy, right? But Recruitics was really born in 2012 out of a need to better understand performance of jobs, help talent acquisition professionals automate the process of getting their jobs out to market, and really help analyze how the jobs were performing. There really wasn't a technology at that time that did it the way we wanted it to be done, so we built it. And it was the very first programmatic job ad platform. But fast forward today with the acquisition of KRT Marketing, we are a full service agency that handles every stage of the candidate journey. So from the first time they arrive to interact with your brand, all the way through all the touch points and providing those analytics along the way. So my job is to really listen to customers' needs and provide effective solutions to kind of help them. I feel like right now the conversations are very much, we need help now. We need to find candidates. The market's wackadoodle, right? So the first question I ask back is, well, what's your EVP? What's your employment brand say? I could come up with the best marketing strategies in the world, rep buildings and mobile billboards and talking QR codes. But at the end of the day, when they land somewhere, what is your company saying about the promise to their employees and candidates? And then I usually have to engage the help of my creative director, Bruce Carey, who to me is the best in the business, and he will help us develop the best EVP and employment brands around.
That's Awesome. I love that sentiment where if it doesn't exist today, let's go out and build it. Now you're helping companies all over the globe with attracting talent in such a challenging market that it is. I saw Jen chimed in the chat section and said, "Do you like Mad Men?" It sounds like you're almost the Don Draper of Recruitics right now, where it's, hey, exactly. I can make you the most beautiful advertisement, but if it doesn't align with your organization, it's not doing either of us a disservice. So my question for you is, and this is also a tradition on the show, is nobody gets out of Talent Experience Live without answering the icebreaker question. So what element do you find that organizations depend on the most to really convey that employer brand in that EVP?
From your poll, I was the one who answered all of the above. I don't think that you can just say one. Your employment brand, your EVP needs to live and breathe on every stage of that journey. So it's all of the above.
Yeah. It absolutely is all of the above. I think of it as a nice cocktail, right? If you're making a martini or something along those lines, you forget the blue cheese stuffed olives, you forget the vermouth. It's just not going to be right. You can see my mind.
Now you're talking my language, Devin. I knew I liked you.
Absolutely. Now, Michelle, I know you spoke at I Am Phenom last year, and it was all around EVP. What were some of your highlights from that session? What were some key takeaways? What is something that if somebody didn't attend what I think was the last in-person event for HR on the face of the earth, what did they miss?
First of all, that was the last and greatest conference of the world because it was the last one that we attended and socialized, and I miss it so much. It was a fantastic event. The donut wall forever lives in my brain. I did a presentation with my friend Tony Prudente from Brother. He used to work at Brother. He is an amazing human, and we did a presentation called Not Your Grandmother's EVP. We told the story about how Brother is a household name. Right? Everyone thinks of Brother. Oh yeah, isn't that like a sewing machine or a fax machine? But did anybody know who Brother is today and why it's such a great place to work? And the EVP was at your side. Brother's at your side through every step of your career journey. And our job was to really make that brand activated. So where did we start? Of course, we started on Phenom's platform, and then we did it across the entire digital footprint. So it was a fantastic way to showcase all of the different touch points in the candidate journey with your employment brand and how it's so important to be consistent in that messaging so that candidates really soak it in. They say that a candidate has anywhere from 3 to 18 different touch points with your brand before they're applying for a job. So it's really important that that message is consistent across all of those touch points.
It makes sense that there are so many different touch points throughout the process, because when you think about it, a candidate, switching a job, that's a huge decision, right? I talk about it all the time on the program where you spend more time with your coworkers, even if you are working from home, on Zoom meetings all day long, than oftentimes you do with your loved ones and family. So for them to really check all the boxes and make sure that the organization lines up with what they're looking for makes sense. Now, it's easy to, talk about doing employer brand and EVP correctly, but I'm sure a lot of organizations get it wrong. We'll get into that in a moment. My question for you is, what are some of your favorite examples of employer brand, and why do you think they stand out and become successful in that sense?
Well, first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to differentiate EVP and employment brand, because I guarantee there's a handful of folks sitting at my Recruitics office going, she better say this, because a lot of times people interchange the words, right? And I just want to say, EVP is the promise you make as an employer to your employees and candidates in return for their commitment to work for you. It entails all the benefits and rewards and differentiations of the organization that they work for. Your employer brand, on the other hand, is the face of the company that you show the outside world, right? It's the sum of all the things that differentiate you and the why. So in other words, the EVP is really why come work here. The employer brand is the how and what it takes to work there, and it's the outside front. Right. So you asked me, what are my favorite brands? And my goodness, there are so many. There's so many EVPs and so many brands that go through my brain. There are the ones that speak for themselves, right? The ones that are iconic, the Amazons of the world. It's still day one. Always learning, always improving. You got to act like it's always day one, because once you get to day two, you're fast forwarding to the end. So I love that concept. I love Facebook. Do your most meaningful work here. Like, the work you do at Facebook impacts the world. It's subject to what you think there, but it could. I feel that the work you do somewhere like at a Danaher is really going to change the world. Finding cures for pandemics, for example. I like simplicity. I like Apple's EVP. Join us and just be you. Like, be yourself. We'll embrace it, and you'll fit into our culture. I feel that, an EVP or an employment brand that really resonates with me is culture. I'm all about the culture and conveying that. And for me, Chewy does the most amazing job. Chewy has built their EVP and employment brand all around company culture. They do not call their team members. They call them a Chewtopian. Like, it makes you want to be a Chewtopian. And I don't even know exactly what entails the characteristics, but I just want to be one. I want to be part of that tribe. That to me is really compelling. And I also like examples of someone like a Hershey's who, you think Hershey's, you think chocolate, you get hungry, you want to have a glass of wine with your chocolate. But I love Hershey's EVP. You haven't reached your full potential yet. Neither have we. There's more to be made. There's so much legwork and so much that you can do with that. So if you can be creative with that messaging that really resonates with that candidate, I love the approach of those brands.
Absolutely. The one thing that stands out there when you mentioned, the Hershey's and the Chewy's of the world is there's so many similarities between their actual brand and what they're selling and how they're making dollars and cents at the end of the day. But also, there's so much separate but equal thought process that goes into their employer brand, right? Mm-hmm. And what they're showcasing their employees. Now, my question is, I know you described the differences between EVP and employer brand. How have these changed over the years? You mentioned some companies that have been around for quite a while, right? They're mainstays, staples, if you will, in the industry. How has their approach changed? And also, how is their overall EVP and employer brand changing at the end of the day?
Yeah, years ago, you almost never heard anybody say, "Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm the global employment brand manager for company X." That just didn't exist. Today, however, there's a whole underground world of EB folks, and I am so proud to know so many of them. It is a fantastic tribe for sure. But I would say even those iconic brands and big names and folks you've never heard of, startups, they are just now venturing into hiring folks that are charging, employment brand. And oftentimes I talk to companies where, they're a party of one. I was part of an event a couple months ago and joined one of the networking roundtables. And I had the pleasure of sitting down with someone from Netflix. And I was just so surprised to learn, like, Netflix is Netflix, right? Like, who doesn't know Netflix? And they have like a party of one doing their employment brand work. And it's just amazing to me. But, if you think about how it's evolved, let's just use current times. For example, at the onset of the pandemic, companies of anywhere just needed to stop and pivot and go, nobody knows what's going on. Nobody can predict the future. I feel like healthcare companies in specifics had to stop and go, what are we going to do here? It was more important than ever at that moment to be able to pivot. And even if you had an EVP, an employment brand that was well established, you needed to revamp it, to talk openly, honestly, and really in transparency on what you were doing to patients, to protect your employees, to protect your candidates. And, this is pre-pandemic, during pandemic. And then the turn of events of the world unfortunately happened where DE&I became such a forefront of everyone's mind. So companies really started paying attention. They should have always been paying attention, but they really started paying attention. So then the whole messaging became about what they're doing to really embrace DE&I culture at their companies. So fast forward to today, we have more jobs in the market than the history of the world. So wrap your brain around that. We are almost at 11 million jobs, 10.9. So 11 million jobs out there. So imagine you're standing on the hill, you're in talent acquisition, you're looking at 11 million job openings. How do you make your job, your company stand out from all of those? That's what needs to happen. You need to have an EVP that differentiates you from all of those companies, all of those jobs. And as people start to get back to work, you really have to have that compelling message of why they would choose you over all of those 11 million jobs out there.
It's a competitive market. 11 million is a lot of jobs, right? Especially when you're looking at such a small talent pool at this point in time. And Jen chimes in and says 3 biggies: transparency, communication, and empathy. And we had Tony from Brother come on probably at this point almost a year ago, and he talked specifically around DE&I and those 3 key aspects. And my next question, I think, ties into a lot of what you were saying about how it focuses on employees, and a lot of the DE&I focus was not just on external candidates, but also people that work for their organization and seeing if they were going to stand up for what was right. So oftentimes that EVP is traditionally associated with what I like to call window shoppers, right? Candidates that are just kind of perusing the site. You get a LinkedIn notification from a recruiter, that you've never really heard of this company. Let me click on the website, see what they have to offer. But now it's really evolving into retaining employees. How different are the approaches there when you're looking for that EVP that's wooing candidates and then also keeping your current talent at your organization and helping it grow?
Devin, I just heard this term this week for the first time, but apparently there's a real thing, the Great Resignation. So you bring up a super hot topic, right? EVPs are traditionally associated with wooing candidates, but now it's about retention, right? So from recruitment to retention and employment competition and engagement, defining your EVP helps your team across the board, right? It's about defining the essence of your company and how unique it is and what it stands for. So it's the central reason that people are proud and motivated to work there and to stay there with your company. So I really feel it keeps your employees coming to work every day, right? Yes, they like who they work with. Yes, they like the work they do, hopefully, but a strong EVP and workforce go hand in hand. But on the flip side, companies that don't have a strong EVP or employment brand can really lead to high turnover, in this case, mass resignations, or even attracting an unqualified workforce. Charlotte Marshall and her husband, Brian Adams, wrote a great book, The Give and Get. And I love how they take this concept of, not only should your EVP and employment brand, attract talent and help with retention, but also repel the talent that maybe isn't a great fit for your organization in the first place. According to recent studies done by Forbes, more than 40% of employees are thinking about leaving their current job in 2021. That is definitely the Great Resignation right there, right? So my advice is level up that EVP and really take a hard look at, what your EVP and employment brand is saying.
And that's not Summer 69 Brian Adams, correct? Just because that's immediately where my mind went.
It's not, but he's OG like that.
Okay. All right. So a plethora of knowledge there. For those of you just joining us, we are talking about getting your EVP right and employer brand and the differences between that with Michelle Sargent of Recruitics. you bring up the Great Resignation, or you'll love this term that I heard a couple weeks ago, which is this turnover tsunami, which really I think keeps talent acquisition professionals as well as HR professionals up at night, right? With these horrifying names. The other thing that's probably keeping them up at night is these common misconceptions that they have around EVP and how best to promote it. What are some of the craziest stories that you've heard about organizations trying to promote their EVP and where they're truly getting it wrong?
Wow. Well, let me just say, if you're in the Bay Area and you didn't know who Cepheid is, you do now. Cepheid did an amazing job. It's a Danaher company of, a whole brand activation and really telling their story and just enough teasing around what their company is doing. It's like, while your CEO's in outer space, ours wants to meet you face to face. I mean, fantastic, right? I think that there's some that really make me stop and go, that is magnificent. And others that, go, you just didn't quite get it right. I think a big misconception is folks that come to me and say, I ask, what is your EVP? What is your employment brand? Oh, we've got it. And I say, well, what is it? And, they tell me, and I'm like, look, you have to think of it like this. Think of it as a table. You have 4 legs and a tabletop. And each leg of that table represents a promise that your organization makes, a mission, a promise to your existing employees, your candidates. And each one has its own validity. But on top lays the EVP, and it pulls it all together. And you would never have one leg without all 4 and the table, and you'd never have the tabletop without the leg supporting it. So it all goes together. What an EVP is not is a headline, a slogan. It's never sometimes written even in a single statement. It's just conveyed in messaging. So I think that is the biggest misconception, that it's not a mission statement or value or a culture code. It's really just about the promises that you're making to your employees and candidates.
And it has to be holistic in that sense as well, right? You can't have one without the other. So when we take that concept of you can't have a table without, the legs or the tabletop without the legs, or the legs without the tabletop. My next question is, when you are speaking with organizations that are looking to really overhaul their EVP, they've recognized, hey, we have a problem here. We need to all get on the same page. What tips do you offer them with it being such a cohesive project that really requires a lot of communication and a lot of everyone being on the same page? How do you give advice for such a tall task?
My creative team will love me for this, but take the time that it takes. Don't rush it. And don't skip the phases. It really, if you're going to embark on this project, do it well. So first and foremost, get the buy-in from all the stakeholders up front, because if you want a thorough process, you have to have buy-in from all levels. And that doesn't mean the CMO and just marketing and just talent acquisition. You really need that buy-in from all levels of the company, right? I say from the C-suite to the hourly workers and everyone in between, get the right folks to have a seat at that table and set those goals. Then take the time to do the discovery and the research. Make sure you have representation from all levels in the organization, focus groups, surveys, do a competitive analysis. Take 4 or 5 of your top competitors and really do an internal brand audit, an external brand audit, a competitive analysis, and take that time to do that discovery and research piece of the puzzle. A lot of times people are like, we don't have time for that, but you have to make time if you really want an authentic and true EVP. Then, you put the employment development together. You get validation. It's really important to make sure you got it right. So validate that internally, externally, and just make sure that it resonates with all folks. And then it's how you're going to express that and how you're going to do brand activation where it lives, like your pulse that you put up on LinkedIn. workshops. And I just think, doing each phase completely and not trying to rush the project so your ultimate result is thorough is so, so important.
No procrastination on this. It is not like me getting through my college papers and staying up all night. You really have to do the time and get
crammer.
it done.
Don't be the crammer.
No, absolutely not. And that makes sense, right? And the other thing that really stood out to me there is getting all of the stakeholders involved throughout the entire business. How many organizations have we seen say, you're not just another employee or you're not just a data point on a spreadsheet? Prove it at the end of the day. When it comes to your EVP and your employer brand, make sure that all of the parties involved are involved, and they're also going to have different interests and different stakes that they are bringing to the table, and all of those are going to be important when it comes to attracting talent. One thing that I think is the hottest trend right now is organizations are constantly trying to stand out, right? And at this point, it kind of just seems, in my opinion, like a tie-dye of we're different in this way, we're different in this way. What are companies doing to differentiate themselves? And is it technology or is it some of that messaging that you've talked about? Because it seems like, from what I can see, everyone is, we're nothing like anyone else. And they all kind of sound exactly the same when they say that.
Right? Sounds like a bunch of dating profiles. I like outdoors and long walks in the park. So how do you do it the best is your question. I don't think anything will convey your EVP employment brand culture better than video, right? I think that video is going to stand out and really give that content and those candidate stories and experiences in a real way. I don't know if anybody's seen this. If not, Dr. James McQueevy's Forrester study, how video will take over the world. One video is worth 1.8 million words. That's powerful. And, if you think about it right now, with 10 million, 11 million jobs out there, right? How are you going to make yourself stand out? Are you, it's no longer about just what your career site's saying and just about going to the job boards. People are going to TikTok to find jobs, like not to find jobs, but maybe they're on TikTok to look at videos. You want that generation you got to meet them where they are, on their Gmail, on their YouTube. This is on YouTube, correct, Devin?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
You got to meet them where they are. So that means video is super important. I know that at Recruitics recently, we met with one of our clients and, we really took a look at where they were and where the candidates they wanted to attract. And we said, you got to be there. You got to be, doing these Snapchat filters and TikTok videos. So we actually went out and did a whole shoot for a week to do employee testimonials, company culture, things that we could use on all of their social channels and really have a lot of legs to live for a long time, because nothing says it better than a video can show it.
That makes sense. What's the old saying is a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think you said a video is worth, what is it, 8 million? Was that the number?
1.8 million words.
1.8 million.
Study.
That's a lot of words. And I'm not much of a reader, so I completely understand why video is taking the world by storm, especially with companies like Netflix. Tom chimes in with a question that is, does your average candidate even crave the outrageous differentiations that organizations offer, the familiarity, the stability of those sorts of things?
I think that's a great question, Tom. I think there's a way to do it both. I think that they do crave stability and, an organization that has that. But why can't you show that through these outrageous antics, right? There's a way to, I think, do both. It's just how you convey that message and where you convey that message. And I think that you don't always have to have, like the crazy movie theater advertising, mobile billboards. I mean, we're doing it all, right? It's Q4. Everybody needs that hourly worker. There probably isn't a tactic at this moment that I haven't heard of, but I think that there's a way through those tactics that you can also convey that your company is a leading brand and doing really exciting things. Even if it's not a household name, that you still have a lot to offer.
That makes sense. And speaking of organizations that are household names, what happens when they solely focus on the bottom line, right? And solely focus on their consumer brand reputation as opposed to thinking about it holistically, including that EVP as well as their employer brand?
I love this. I love talking to companies, whether I've heard of them, whether they're a household name. But my favorite is like these big brands that are like, oh my God, everybody knows this brand, but nobody necessarily knows them as an employer. I think that EVP is really that North Star that separates your consumer brand from your employer brand, right? So if you think about some super iconic brand slogans like Nike, just do it. Everybody knows that. You could say, just do it. Everybody knows Nike, but that's not an EVP, right? Just do what? Like, what are we going to do, right? You have to have that EVP message. Red Bull gives you wings. Fantastic. What does that mean for me to come work for you? So I think that sometimes it translates really, really nicely, right? Back in the day, there was I think Ritz-Carlton, ladies and gentlemen, helping ladies and gentlemen. There was a really great way to be able to tie the consumer brand with the employment brand. But I feel that you need an EVP to differentiate yourself and really compel talent to join your organization from an employment standpoint. Because not everybody wants to come work for you just because you're this company. They might choose a company that's less iconic because they've done a really good job showcasing what they're doing for their employees. So it's just something to keep in mind.
That makes sense. And I love the North Star analogy, right? Because when you think back to, people traveling via ship before we had large boats or airplanes or anything like that, they used the North Star for direction, right? On where to go and how to get to their end all be all, that final destination. And when you think about an organization, in order to grow your business, you rely on the talent that you bring in. You rely on the talent that you grow within your organization. So I may steal that North Star analogy if that's okay with you, Michelle. But yeah. I know you mentioned a couple of organizations that do brand really well. And you mentioned the Ritz-Carlton as well. Is there a way that organizations can combine that consumer brand with that employer brand and that EVP as well and do it successfully?
Yeah, I think that there's oftentimes definite synergies that can happen there. That's the case where you really need to do brand validation. There is such a thing, right? Where you have this consumer brand. There's a way to manipulate that in messaging to translate that very nicely into a very strong EVP and employer brand. But you still shouldn't skip the steps to validate that and make sure that it is, resonating with your internal employees at all levels, externally to the candidates that you want to attract. And it's a key differentiator between your competitors, right? So even if you have a super strong brand, I still really, really highly recommend doing a validation exercise and some sort of messaging so that it's very specific to attracting talent and retaining talent.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, I want to thank you so much for joining TXL today. I learned a ton. I hope our audience did as well. Thank you for taking the time. Before we let you go, any parting shots, any key takeaways that you'd like to call out before we hop off air?
I loved being a part of your show, Devin, and thank you all for joining in, or whoever's going to watch later on. Anybody that's going to be at HR Tech in Las Vegas in a couple weeks, let's connect. I'm so excited to see everybody face to face again, and happy EVPing.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. Happy National Guacamole Day. Happy Working Parents Day. I'm certainly going to celebrate that later. I hope you do as well. And hopefully we see you soon in person. We can get you in the studio, or we can simply do it virtually again and talk a little bit more EVP and employer brand.
I can't wait. Thanks, Phenom. Take
Thanks,
care.
Michelle.
Bye.
That was Michelle Sargent, VP and New Business of Partnerships at Recruitics. Before you hop off, don't forget to like and subscribe, All Things Phenom. We do this show every single week at noon Eastern time, always with HR thought leaders talking about hot new HR tech and everything in between, with the exception of next week. Next week, we are actually going to be live via I Am HR, which is a 4-day event. It starts on September the 21st, goes through the 24th. We're going to be focusing on the 4 key experience: candidate, employee, recruiter, as well as manager. So definitely register for that when you get the opportunity. You can register at phenom.com/IamHR dash 2021 because we are in the year of 2021. Definitely register. Before you hop off as well, I do want to call out last week's episode. We talked a little bit about building the dream team and what HR can learn from pro football. A little bit of a crazy topic, but I think it was a super fun one. We dove into what the most effective teams have in common. It's a culture that embraces and recognizes and invests in the people. So whether you're talking about an NFL franchise or your organization, we do have a clip a little bit about how recruiters are oftentimes a lot like our star quarterbacks on our team. So with that being said, let's air the clip. The next up is my favorite. And I have to preface that because I used to do this. And no, it wasn't quarterback for the New York Jets or any other team. It's the recruiters. I was a recruiter back in the day, and I oftentimes view recruiters as quarterbacks because they're the key to winning and losing, right? We look at the Patriots and how they were a dynasty, but Tom Brady left and immediately won a Super Bowl afterwards. And when we look at it from a recruiter's perspective, they are the ones that are going to get blamed if you can't bring in a quality or an important hire, right? Because they're having those conversations. And they're also responsible for building the relationships with your hiring managers, with the talent that's coming through the door. We talk so much here at Phenom around, rather than being in talent acquisition, you have to be in talent advising. And that's the same thing that really quarterbacks are doing. They're advising their star wide receiver or their star running back to run a particular route, or perhaps audible or something along those lines. And recruiters are audibling every single day. You think about the scheduling that goes into getting new hires and everything in between. At the end of the day, if you win a championship, your quarterback is going to get all the shine. If you bring in a great hire, your quarterback is going to get all the shine. And if you don't, they're both going to get blamed. That was last week's episode, all around the similarities between pro football and HR and what you can learn from the two. Thank you all for joining. Special shout out to Michelle once again. Really enjoyed having you on the program. Shout out to John, Kathy, Jen, Amy, as well as John again, Christina, and everyone who chimed into the comment section. Really appreciated it. I had a lot of fun on today's episode. Don't forget to register for I Am HR. That is next week, starting September the 21st. I'll be there. I hope you are as well. And in the meantime, I hope everyone has a happy and safe weekend. Thanks so much.